This plaza area was originally designed to have the monument that you see down behind the National, the Art Museum, but the Natural History Museum, the one of Stefanik. Was supposed to stand right where you see the middle of that flower bed there, and in front of it a reflecting. But during the 30s there was a lot of dissension between ethnic groups in the city, and there was a policy that they didn't want any war heroes here in the gardens itself because it was supposed to be a peace garden. The irony of that whole thing is Stefanik was instrumental in founding the whole nation of Czechoslovakia by forming a national coalition from abroad by other countries, by immigrants that moved to other countries. They started in Britain and France and in U.S. and then they went around the world looking for people to solicit support to. When the Austro-Hungarian Empire fell in 1916 during the Second War, or First War, they actually formed an alliance between the Czechs and the Slovaks here, the Czech Alliance and the Slovak League of America, which in Gray's Armory in 1914.
That's what it was.
Yeah. 1914, they signed. The Klivenska dohota was actually signed in 1915. In October, I believe it was, which is the Cleveland Pact, which was a declaration of kind of independence, but they recognized each other as brothers, that they would have their own military, government, and learning institutions or whatever. And it was not the first one. The first one was actually, I believe, in Chicago, which was 1914. The Cleveland Pact was in 1915. There was one in Philadelphia in 1916. And the most famous one, which they used the Cleveland Pact as a format, was the Pittsburgh Pact, which was recognized by President Wilson, and so consequently they used that to start a national front to form the government of Czechoslovakia in exile, and then that's where the marriage between the two Czechs and the Slovaks came about. The history actually is intermingled over a lot of time. The Czechs and the Slovaks existed in those territories for a long time, but the encroachment of other nationalities influenced them differently. The Slovaks are more influenced by Hungarian, the Czechs are more influenced by Germans, and they were surrounded by them. So consequently, I don't know if there's any questions about the garden itself, but the original plantings here reflected nature itself. And they chose those two icons of culture, the Kolar, because he predicted again the coming of independence of the Slovak peoples, and Ferdinand was actually the actualization of the immigrants here, forming a coalition here, and he formed orphanages and care agencies and hospitals, and actually that's how the jednotas worked together before. It was educating Slovaks here how they could live in this country. So he was more important about the foundation of our community here, whereas Kolar was way before the Czech and Slovak governments formed an alliance and had the vision that preceded everybody else that forecasted the coming of the nation. So in the plantings here, they had hazelnut trees originally on the hillside here. They had witch hazel. They had all kinds of herbal trees. They had chokeberry and whatever. This whole garden was tiered with different levels of plantings here that reflected nature itself, because the Slavic peoples themselves lived amongst nature and they used it. So consequently, the garden reflected that.
You know, I think my mother talked about my grandmother and the linden trees, how she would dry the linden in the attic, the little whirly things, and that was the tea for the rest of the year. I don't know if you've had Slovak grandmothers, if you have the same story.
But no, I don't.
Yeah, she always talked about the linden.
As a calming agent, so if you were hot or whatever. It also worked as an astringent. Like we had the story of the one guy who used to monkey up the trees from East Slovakia went back. What's his name?
Stefan.
Stefan.
Yeah.
He had a gunshot wound to his hand, and his father took the leaves of the linden tree and wrapped it around that and changed it for him, and it drew out the poison out of his hand so it could heal.
It's an ingredient in
So
cough
the-
syrup too.
The linden tree is common to, I neglected to say, but there was a linden tree that was planted by President Beneš, who was the second president.
Tiso is the one you were trying to think of. Who you couldn't think of?
Tiso.
Was it Tiso.
President Tiso is the one that was, but he wasn't president at that time. It was after Hacha that he became, and he was more like pushed into that position, and because the Germans knew that they could use him to occupy the country, and so they took him by night, this President Tiso, over to Petržalka from Bratislava, held a gun to his head and made him sign the Seed from the Czech Republic, declaring that we need a protectorship from the Germans, and so consequently that's how that split came about. Well, when the Russians finally came in after the war to liberate the Czechs and the Slovaks, Tiso was captured by the Russians, and they hung him for treason for collaborating with the Germans. So he was in a hard spot.
Yeah, he was getting killed one way or the other.
Did you talk
We
about
should
the larch
probably-
trees? If you spend any time in the Tatra Mountains, that tall, the larch tree, those are the Tatra Mountains are full of
Yeah,
larch
this
trees.
is a larch
What is
tree,
it?
and there were
Called
3
larch-
larches here
larch
originally.
tree, larch, and in Slovakia it's called mojane.
Yeah, this is a large tree, European larch, and we have another one that we introduced. Actually, there were 3 here, and the middle one passed away. And then we have some birch up there on the hill, but the 3 lindens stand out the most, the redbud trees, and then dogwoods here, the ferny buckthorn, which again followed here. And there used to be 3 larches right along this pathway here, but it's too shady for us to put them in here because they really need full sun because they grow that high.